I stood frozen in the doorway of our bedroom, unable to comprehend the sight before me. Katie, my wife of 10 years, was in the arms of a man I had never seen before. My hands began to tremble as the reality of the situation crashed down upon me, a cold, relentless wave of devastation. This was the moment our marriage shattered. Katie looked up, her eyes wide with shock and guilt, as if she had never expected to be caught. The man with her, sensing the gravity of the situation, quickly disentangled himself and edged toward the door, avoiding my gaze. My heart pounded in my chest, a chaotic drumbeat of anger, betrayal, and profound sadness. How could this be happening? How could the woman I had shared my life with, the mother of my children, betray me so utterly? 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, each more painful than the last. I thought of our wedding day and the promises we made to each other. I remembered the birth of our children, Michael and Jessica, and the countless moments of joy we had shared as a family. Every memory now seemed tainted, overshadowed by this unbearable moment of betrayal. Summoning all my strength, I stepped into the room, my voice barely controlled. "What is going on here?" I demanded, my words trembling with barely suppressed rage. Katie couldn't meet my eyes. She looked down at the floor, her face flushed with shame. The man, clearly uncomfortable, mumbled something about leaving and slipped past me, disappearing down the hallway. I was left alone with Katie, the silence between us heavy and suffocating. "Answer me, Katie," I insisted, my voice cracking. "Who is he? How long has this been going on?" She finally looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. "His name is Mark," she said quietly. We met a few months ago. I never meant for this to happen, John. I'm so sorry." Her words pierced me like a dagger. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to make her feel a fraction of the pain she had inflicted upon me. But all I could do was stand there, overwhelmed by a torrent of emotions. The room seemed to spin, and I had to grip the edge of the dresser to steady myself. "Sorry?" I repeated, my voice hollow. "You think sorry can fix this? How could you do this to us, to our family?" Katie's tears began to flow freely, but they did little to soften my heart. I felt as if a chasm had opened between us, which could never be bridged. "I never wanted to hurt you," she sobbed. "But somewhere along the way I felt lost. I didn't know how to tell you." Her words only deepened my despair. Had our marriage been a lie all along? Had I missed the signs, the subtle shifts in her behavior that hinted at her growing discontent? I thought of the nights I'd spent working late, convinced I was providing for our family, never realizing I was pushing her away. "Lost?" I echoed, struggling to understand. "Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you talk to me? We could have worked through this together." Katie shook her head, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "I tried, John, I did, but I felt so alone, so disconnected. And then I met Mark, and he made me feel alive again." Her confession felt like a punch to the gut. I had been so focused on my responsibilities, on being the provider, that I had neglected the most important part of our relationship, her. But even so, nothing could justify what she had done. Nothing could excuse the betrayal that now lay between us. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my swirling emotions. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this, Katie," I said quietly. "But for the sake of our children, we need to figure out what happens next." She nodded, wiping her tears away. "I understand. I never wanted it to come to this, but I know I have to face the consequences of my actions." The weight of her words settled heavily in the room. We stood there, two broken people, surrounded by the remnants of what had once been a loving marriage. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with pain and difficult decisions. But one thing was clear: our lives would never be the same again. After that fateful conversation, our home transformed into a cold, empty shell. The warmth and laughter that once filled the rooms were replaced by an oppressive silence that seemed to seep into every corner. Katie and I moved through the house like ghosts, avoiding each other as much as possible. The tension between us was palpable, an invisible barrier that kept us apart. Mornings were the hardest. I would wake up early, hoping to leave the house before Katie emerged from the bedroom. I couldn't bear to see her, not after what had happened. The sight of her only brought back the painful memories of that night, and I needed to escape those thoughts. even if just for a few hours. I would make a quick breakfast for the kids, ensuring they were ready for school, and then slip out the door before she could appear. At work, I tried to bury myself in tasks, hoping that the busyness would drown out the turmoil inside me. But no matter how hard I tried, thoughts of Katie and our broken marriage crept into my mind. My productivity plummeted, and my colleagues began to notice the change in me. They offered their sympathy, but I couldn't bring myself to talk about it. The wound was too fresh, too raw. Returning home in the evenings was no easier. The once welcoming atmosphere now felt alien and uninviting. I would enter the house and be greeted by the deafening silence, a stark contrast to the lively chatter that used to greet me. Katie would often be in the kitchen, preparing dinner, her movements mechanical and devoid of emotion. We barely spoke, our interactions limited to the bare necessities of cohabitation. The kids sensed the change too. Michael and Jessica were quieter, their playful energy dampened by the tension between their parents. I tried to be strong for them, to show them that everything would be okay, but it was a facade I struggled to maintain. They had questions, of course, and I did my best to answer them without revealing the painful truth. It broke my heart to see the confusion and sadness in their eyes. Weekends, once a time for family outings and shared experiences, became a series of solitary activities. I would take the kids to the park or the movies, anything to keep them occupied, and away from the toxic atmosphere at home. Katie stayed behind, her presence a reminder of the fracture that had split our lives in two. We were like two strangers sharing a space, our paths crossing only out of necessity. Nights were the loneliest. I would lie awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. Katie had moved to the guest room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by dreams of what had been and what was now lost. I would wake up in the early hours, drenched in sweat, the emptiness beside me, a cruel reminder of the betrayal that had torn us apart. Despite the coldness that pervaded our home, there were moments when I caught glimpses of the woman I had once loved. I would see her with the children, her face softening as she interacted with them. These fleeting moments of tenderness were a stark contrast to the tension that dominated our interactions, and they filled me with a bittersweet longing for what we had lost. But no matter how much I tried to hold on to those glimpses, the reality of our situation always brought me back to the present. Katie and I were broken, and our home was a reflection of that brokenness. The walls that had once echoed with love and laughter now stood silent, bearing witness to our unraveling. Days turned into weeks, and the emptiness of our home became the new normal. We continued to coexist in this cold, silent world, each of us grappling with our pain and guilt. The future was uncertain, and the path to healing seemed impossibly long. But amidst the emptiness, there was a small, flickering hope that one day we might find a way to rebuild and fill our home with warmth and love again. The day after everything fell apart, I found myself sitting in a dimly lit bar across from my best friend, Jack. The place was quiet, with only a few patrons scattered around, lost in their worlds. The smell of stale beer and fried food hung in the air, mixing with the soft murmur of conversation and the clinking of glasses. It was the perfect setting for the kind of heart-to-heart talk I desperately needed. Jack looked at me with concern, his eyes filled with the unspoken questions he was too polite to voice. He knew something was wrong the moment I called him, my voice strained and hollow. We had been friends since college, and he could read me better than anyone. Now, sitting across from him, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. If there was anyone who could understand, it was Jack. "John, what's going on?" he asked gently, leaning forward with his hands clasped around his beer. "You sounded pretty shaken up on the phone." I took a deep breath, the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. "Jack, it's Katie. She's been having an affair." The words felt like they were ripping out of me, each one a painful admission of my broken reality. Jack's eyes widened in shock. "What? Are you serious?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't believe it. How did you find out?" I recounted the events of the previous night, the image of Katie in another man's arms still vivid in my mind. As I spoke, Jack listened intently, his expression a mix of anger and sorrow. He was furious on my behalf, but also deeply empathetic, understanding the profound sense of betrayal I felt. "Man, I don't even know what to say," Jack finally said, shaking his head. "That's just awful. I can't imagine how you're feeling right now. It's like a nightmare, I admitted, my voice cracking. One moment, everything was fine, and the next, everything fell apart. I feel so lost, Jack. I don't know what to do. Jack reached across the table and placed a reassuring hand on my arm. I'm here for you, buddy. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. We'll get through this together. I appreciated his words, but they did little to ease the pain gnawing at my heart. Thanks, Jack. It means a lot, but I don't even know where to start. How do you move on from something like this? Jack took a sip of his beer, thinking carefully before he spoke. It's not going to be easy, John. There's no quick fix for something like this, but you have to take it one day at a time. Focus on what you can control. Take care of yourself and the kids, and don't be afraid to lean on your friends and family. We're all here to support you. His advice was sound, but the path ahead still seemed impossibly daunting. I know you're right, I said, trying to muster a smile. It's just hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel right now. Jack nodded, understanding the depth of my despair. That's okay. It's normal to feel this way. Just remember that you're not alone. We'll figure this out, one step at a time. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation hanging between us. I took a long drink of my beer, hoping the alcohol might dull the edge of my pain, even if just for a little while. Do you think there's any chance of fixing things with Katie? Jack asked cautiously. I shook my head, the reality of the situation sinking in. I don't know, Jack. She says she's sorry, that she never meant for this to happen. But how do you come back from something like that? The trust is gone. I don't know if it can ever be rebuilt. Jack sighed, his expression somber. I get it. Trust is everything in a relationship. Without it, well, it's hard to imagine how you move forward. But whatever you decide, make sure it's what's best for you and the kids. That's the hardest part, I admitted, thinking about how this will affect Michael and Jessica. They deserve so much better than this. They're tough kids, Jack said, a small smile on his face. And they have a great dad who loves them. You'll make it through this, John. One way or another, you'll find a way to move forward. I nodded, trying to absorb his words. It was a small comfort amid my turmoil, a reminder that I wasn't facing this alone. Jack's unwavering support was a lifeline, something to hold on to as I navigated the storm that had become my life. We spent the next few hours talking about everything and nothing, the way old friends do. For a little while, I managed to forget the pain, losing myself in the comfort of Jack's presence and the familiarity of our friendship. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start. As I left the bar that night, I felt a small glimmer of hope. The road ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges I couldn't yet fathom, but with friends like Jack by my side, I knew I wouldn't have to face it alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to get through another day. Explaining the situation to our children, Michael and Jessica, was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. They were too young to fully grasp the complexities of what was happening, yet old enough to sense that something was wrong. Their innocent eyes, filled with confusion and worry, made my heart ache even more. I gathered them in the living room, the familiar space now a backdrop to a conversation that would change their lives forever. Michael, at 8, was old enough to understand the seriousness in my voice, while Jessica, only 6, clung to her favorite stuffed animal, her big eyes darting between me and her brother. "Dad, what's going on?" Michael asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Why is Mom sleeping in the guest room?" I took a deep breath, fighting to keep my composure. "Michael, Jessica, there's something I need to talk to you about. Your mom and we've been having some problems. Sometimes, even when two people love each other, they can hurt each other and things can get very complicated." Jessica's lip quivered, and she hugged her stuffed animal tighter. "Are you and Mommy getting a divorce?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back, determined to stay strong for my children. "I don't know yet, sweetheart. We're trying to figure things out. But no matter what happens, both of us love you very much. That will never change." Michael's face contorted with a mix of anger and sadness. "Why can't you just fix it? Can't you and Mom talk and make things better?" I wanted to tell him that everything would be okay, and that we would find a way to repair the damage, but the truth was, I didn't know if we could. "We're trying, Michael, but sometimes it's not that simple. We have to find a way that's best for all of us, especially for you and Jessica." Jessica's tears began to fall, and she crawled into my lap, seeking comfort. I held her close, stroking her hair, my heart breaking for the pain we were causing them. "I promise you, no matter what happens, we'll always be a family. It might look different, but we'll always be there for you." The conversation left me drained, a hollow feeling in my chest. I had tried to be as honest as possible without overwhelming them, but their sadness and confusion lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the fractured reality we now lived in. In the days that followed, I found myself searching for answers. I needed to understand what had gone wrong, what had driven Katie to seek solace in someone else's arms. I spent hours poring over old photographs, each one a snapshot of happier times. Our wedding day, the births of Michael and Jessica, and family vacations filled with laughter and love. What had happened to that couple, to that family? I also read through old messages and emails, looking for any signs of trouble I might have missed. Had there been moments where Katie had reached out, only for me to be too busy or too distracted to notice? The more I searched, the more I realized how much I had taken for granted. The little moments where she had seemed distant, the times she had tried to talk, only for me to brush it off as nothing serious. One night, I found an old journal of Katie's. I hesitated before opening it, feeling like an intruder, but my desperation for answers overrode my sense of privacy. As I read through her entries, I saw the slow unraveling of her happiness. She wrote about feeling lonely, about my long hours at work, and how she felt like we were growing apart. Her pain and isolation leaped off the pages, and I felt a deep sense of guilt and regret. It was clear that Katie had been struggling for a long time, and I had been too blind to see it. My focus on providing for the family had caused me to neglect the most important part of it, our connection. But knowing this didn't ease my pain, it only made it worse. The realization that I had played a part in our downfall was a heavy burden to bear. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to search for a way forward. I knew that the path to healing would be long and arduous, filled with difficult conversations and painful revelations. But for the sake of Michael and Jessica, I had to try. They deserved parents who could work through their issues, who could find a way to co-parent with love and respect, even if we couldn't repair our marriage. And so, I resolved to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The answers I sought might never fully come, but I knew I had to keep searching, keep striving to understand, if only to become a better father, and perhaps, a better man. The decision to meet with an attorney was one of the most difficult steps I had to take. As I sat in the waiting room of the law office, my mind raced with thoughts of how our lives had reached this point. The sterile environment, with its neatly arranged magazines and the quiet hum of conversation from other rooms, only added to the surreal nature of the situation. I had never imagined that Katie and I would end up here, contemplating the end of our marriage. The attorney, Mr. Simmons, was a seasoned professional, with a calm demeanor that put me slightly at ease. He listened intently as I outlined the events that had led to this moment, his face a mask of professional concern. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers, taking a moment to consider his response. "John, I'm sorry you're going through this," he began. "Divorce is never easy, especially when there are children involved. The first thing we need to do is understand your goals and priorities. What do you want to achieve in this process?" I took a deep breath, trying to articulate the jumble of thoughts in my head. "I want what's best for Michael and Jessica. They're my main concern. I also want to keep the house if possible. It's their home, and I want to provide some stability for them during this time." Mr. Simmons nodded, making notes on a yellow legal pad. "That's understandable. We'll focus on the well-being of your children and see what we can do about the house. We'll also need to discuss custody arrangements, financial settlements, and other legal aspects." The conversation turned to specifics, and I felt a tightening in my chest as we delved into the details of child custody, spousal support, and the division of assets. Each topic was a painful reminder of the life Katie and I had built together and were now dismantling piece by piece. Mr. Simmons was thorough, explaining each step of the process and what I could expect. It was clear that this would be a long and arduous journey, but I knew it was necessary. Leaving the attorney's office, I felt a mixture of relief and dread. relief that I had taken the first step toward resolving our situation, and dread at the thought of the battles that lay ahead. The legal process was daunting, but I knew I had to face it head-on for the sake of my children. When Katie and I sat down to discuss the details of the divorce, the atmosphere was tense. We met in the dining room, the table between us now a chasm that seemed to symbolize the distance that had grown in our relationship. Katie looked tired, her eyes red from crying. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her, despite the hurt and anger that still simmered inside me. "We need to talk about the divorce," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mr. Simmons has outlined the steps we need to take, and we need to figure out how to move forward in the best way possible for Michael and Jessica." Katie nodded, her gaze fixed on the table. "I know. I've spoken to a lawyer as well. I want to make this as smooth as possible for the kids." We started with custody arrangements. Katie agreed that the children should stay with me in the house. She wanted to move in with Mark, her new partner, which stung, but I tried to focus on what was best for the kids. We agreed on joint custody, with the children spending weekends and certain holidays with Katie. It was a painful compromise, but I hoped it would provide some semblance of stability for Michael and Jessica. Next, we discussed the house. Katie wanted to leave it to me and the children, recognizing that it was their home, and that uprooting them would be too disruptive. It felt like a small victory in an otherwise bleak situation, but I was grateful for it. The financial aspects were trickier. We had to divide our assets and discuss spousal support. Katie was willing to forego spousal support in exchange for a larger share of our savings, which seemed fair, given that she was moving in with Mark, who had a stable income. We also agreed to set up a trust fund for the children's future expenses, ensuring that their education and other needs would be covered. The entire discussion was emotionally draining. Each decision we made felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. By the end of it, I was exhausted, both physically and mentally. Katie looked equally worn out, but there was a sense of resolution in her eyes. As we wrapped up our conversation, I looked at Katie, feeling a mixture of sadness and acceptance. "I never thought it would come to this," I said quietly, "but I hope we can find a way to move forward for the sake of Michael and Jessica." Katie nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Me too, John. I'm truly sorry for everything." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history pressing down on us. Despite everything, there was still a part of me who cared for Katie and wanted the best for her. I hoped that, in time, we could find a way to co-parent effectively and rebuild our lives separately. Leaving the dining room, I felt a sense of finality. The road to divorce was now laid out before us, a path we had to walk for the sake of our children and ourselves. It was a painful journey, but necessary. As I looked at Michael and Jessica, I knew I had to be strong for them, to guide them through the storm and ensure that they came out the other side as unscathed as possible. After the decision was made to move forward with the divorce, I found myself in a state of constant restlessness. The pain of the betrayal and the impending end of our marriage weighed heavily on me, so I began to change my habits, seeking any way to distract myself from the emotional turmoil. I started working longer hours, throwing myself into my job with a renewed intensity. The office, once a place of routine, became a refuge where I could focus on something other than the disintegration of my family. My colleagues noticed the change, often commenting on my newfound dedication, but I couldn't bring myself to explain the real reason behind it. Work became my escape, a way to channel my energy and avoid the thoughts that haunted me whenever I was alone. In addition to working longer hours, I took up running. Every morning before dawn, I laced up my sneakers and hit the pavement. The physical exertion provided a temporary relief from the constant ache in my chest. As I ran through the quiet streets, the rhythmic pounding of my feet against the ground became a form of meditation. I pushed myself harder each day, the burn in my muscles a welcome distraction from the pain in my heart. Despite these efforts, the evenings were the hardest. No matter how much I tried to fill my days with work and exercise, I still had to come home to an empty house. The silence was deafening, the absence of Katie and the children a constant reminder of what I had lost. I would sit in the living room staring at the family photos that lined the walls, each one a snapshot of happier times that now felt like a lifetime ago. The routine I fell into was both comforting and numbing. Wake up early, go for a run, spend the day at work, come home, and repeat. It was a way to keep myself busy, to avoid thinking too much about the future or the mistakes of the past. But deep down, I knew it was a temporary fix, a way to stave off the inevitable confrontation with my feelings. One evening, after an especially grueling day at work, I came home to find Michael and Jessica waiting for me. They had spent the day with Katie but were now staying with me for the week. Their presence was a welcome change from the emptiness that usually greeted me, and I felt a surge of love and determination as I walked through the door. "Hey, Dad!" Michael called out, his face lighting up as he saw me. Jessica ran over and hugged me tightly, her small arms wrapping around my waist. "Hey, you two," I said, ruffling Michael's hair and lifting Jessica into my arms. "How was your day?" They both started talking at once, their voices a cheerful cacophony that filled the house with life. We spent the evening playing board games and watching movies. The normalcy of our activities was a soothing balm for my wounded heart. For a few hours, I was able to forget about the divorce and just be a father to my children. As I tucked them into bed later that night, Michael looked up at me with a serious expression. "Dad, are you okay?" His question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on hiding my pain from them that I hadn't realized how perceptive he was. "I'm doing my best, buddy," I replied, giving him a reassuring smile. "It's been a tough time, but having you and Jessica here makes it a lot better." Michael nodded, seeming to accept my answer. "We love you, Dad," he said quietly. "We're going to be okay, right?" I felt a lump in my throat as I looked at him. "Yes, we will," I said, my voice firm. "We'll get through this together." After they were asleep, I went back to the living room and sat in silence, the weight of my responsibilities pressing down on me. I knew I had to keep going, to keep working and running and doing whatever it took to provide for my children. But I also realized that I needed to find a way to heal, to confront my pain, rather than just distract myself from it. In the weeks that followed, I continued to change my habits. I started seeing a therapist, someone who could help me navigate the complex emotions I was dealing with. It was difficult at first, opening up about my feelings and facing the reality of my situation, but it was also necessary. The sessions became a crucial part of my routine, a way to process my grief and begin to heal. Gradually, I began to find a balance. The long hours at work and the early morning runs continued, but they were no longer just a means of escape. They became part of a broader effort to rebuild my life, to create a new normal for myself and my children. The evenings, once a source of dread, slowly transformed into a time of connection and healing as I focused on being present for Michael and Jessica. The road ahead was still uncertain, and the pain of the past lingered, but I was starting to see a path forward. Changing my habits was just the beginning. Healing would take time, but with each passing day, I grew stronger and more determined to create a better future for myself and my children. And in that determination, I found a glimmer of hope. As the reality of our new situation settled in, I knew that Michael and Jessica needed more support than I could provide on my own. The divorce was hard enough for me to handle, but for young children, it was a seismic shift in their world. I decided to have them see a psychologist to help them navigate their emotions and understand the changes in their lives. Our first appointment was with Dr. Harris, a child psychologist who came highly recommended. Her office was warm and inviting, filled with toys and books designed to make children feel comfortable. Michael and Jessica were both nervous, clinging to my hands as we walked in, but Dr. Harris greeted them with a friendly smile that seemed to put them at ease. "Hi, Michael. Hi, Jessica. My name is Dr. Harris," she said, kneeling to their level. "I'm here to help you talk about your feelings and anything that's on your mind. We're going to have some fun too, okay?" Michael nodded cautiously, while Jessica gave a small, hesitant smile. I sat down with Dr. Harris and explained the situation, my heart aching as I recounted the details. She listened attentively, taking notes and asking gentle questions. Afterward, she spent some time alone with Michael and Jessica, using play and conversation to help them express their emotions. Over the following weeks, I noticed a gradual change in my children. They were still sad and confused, but they began to open up more about their feelings. Michael would sometimes talk about his sessions with Dr. Harris, sharing bits and pieces of their conversations. Jessica, too, seemed more at ease, her usual cheerful demeanor slowly returning. One evening, as I was tucking them into bed, Michael looked up at me with a serious expression. Dad, Dr. Harris says it's okay to feel sad about the divorce. She says it's not our fault and that you and Mom still love us very much. I felt a lump in my throat as I nodded. She's right, Michael. It's not your fault at all. Your mom and I love you and Jessica more than anything in the world. We're going to get through this together. Jessica hugged her stuffed animal tightly. And we'll still have fun with you and Mom, right? Absolutely, I said, smiling. We'll always have fun together, no matter what. In addition to the professional help from Dr. Harris, the support from my family became a crucial pillar in our lives. My parents and my sister Anna started visiting more frequently, offering their love and assistance. Their presence was a source of comfort and strength, helping me to cope with the emotional and practical challenges of single parenthood. My parents, though older and a bit frail, were a constant source of wisdom and encouragement. They would often come over and spend time with the kids, reading stories, playing games, and sharing their own experiences of overcoming hardships. Their resilience was inspiring, and their love for Michael and Jessica was a balm for all of us. Anna, my younger sister, was a whirlwind of energy and positivity. She would show up with groceries, cook meals, and help with the household chores, always with a smile and a reassuring word. She had a special bond with Michael and Jessica, often taking them out for ice cream or to the park, giving them a sense of normalcy and joy. One Saturday afternoon, as Anna and I were preparing lunch in the kitchen, she turned to me with a concerned look. "How are you holding up, John?" "Holding up?" I sighed, leaning against the counter. "It's been tough, Anna. Some days are better than others, but having you all here makes a big difference. I don't know what I'd do without you." She placed a hand on my arm, her eyes filled with empathy. "We're family, John. We'll always be here for you. You're doing an amazing job with the kids, and we'll get through this together." Her words were a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this struggle. Despite the pain and uncertainty, the love and support from my family gave me the strength to keep moving forward. As weeks turned into months, our new life slowly began to take shape. The routine of work, school, therapy sessions, and family visits became the framework within which we rebuilt our lives. There were still difficult days and moments of sadness and frustration, but there were also glimpses of hope and happiness. Michael and Jessica were adjusting, finding their footing in this new reality. Their resilience amazed me, their ability to adapt and find joy despite the upheaval. And I was learning too, learning to balance work and family, to be more present and emotionally available, to find strength in the love and support around me. The road ahead was still long and filled with challenges, but with each passing day, we were moving forward. Step by step, we were building a new life, one rooted in love, resilience, and the unwavering support of family. And in that, I found hope for a brighter future for all of us. A year had passed since the divorce, and life had slowly settled into a new rhythm. The pain of the separation had dulled, replaced by a cautious sense of hope. Michael and Jessica were adjusting well. Their sessions with Dr. Harris helped them navigate their emotions. My work and new habits kept me occupied, and the unwavering support of my family had been a constant source of strength. It was during this time of healing and rebuilding that I met Anna. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue. I hadn't been looking for love. In fact, I was still somewhat wary of relationships. But there was something about Anna that drew me in from the moment we were introduced. She had a warmth and genuine kindness that put me at ease, and our conversation flowed naturally as if we had known each other for years. Anna was a teacher, passionate about her work and her students. She had a way of seeing the good in people, a quality that was both refreshing and reassuring. Over the next few weeks, we began to spend more time together. Our connection deepened with each conversation and each shared experience. One evening, as we sat in a cozy cafe, sipping coffee and talking about everything from our favorite books to our childhood memories, I found myself opening up to her about my past. I told her about Katie, the divorce, and the challenges of being a single parent. She listened intently, her eyes filled with empathy and understanding. "That must have been incredibly hard," she said softly. "But it sounds like you've done an amazing job with Michael and Jessica. They're lucky to have you as their dad." Her words touched me deeply. For so long, I had doubted myself, wondering if I was doing enough, if I was being the father my children needed. Hearing her affirmation was like a balm to my soul. As our relationship grew, Anna became a wonderful presence in our lives. She met Michael and Jessica, and their connection with her was almost immediate. She had a natural way with them, engaging them in conversations, playing games, and showing genuine interest in their lives. They adored her, and it warmed my heart to see how easily she fit into our family dynamic. One sunny Saturday, we all went to the park together. Michael and Jessica ran ahead, laughing and chasing each other, while Anna and I strolled behind them, hand in hand. "They're great kids," Anna said, watching them with a smile. "You've done a wonderful job, John, and I'm really happy to be part of your lives." I squeezed her hand, feeling a surge of gratitude. "I'm happy too, Anna. I never thought I'd find someone like you. You've brought so much joy and love into our lives." She turned to me, her eyes bright. "Love is a beautiful thing, John. It's meant to be shared and experienced fully. I feel so lucky to have found you and the kids." As time went on, our bond grew stronger. Anna was not only a loving partner, but also a supportive presence in our family. She understood the complexities of our situation and navigated them with grace and patience. Her relationship with Michael and Jessica blossomed, and they began to see her as an important part of their lives. One evening, after the kids were asleep, Anna and I sat on the porch, the cool night air wrapping around us. We talked about our future, our dreams, and our hopes. "I want us to build a life together," Anna said, her voice filled with conviction. "I love you, John, and I love Michael and Jessica. I want to be there for all of you, through the good times and the bad." Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at her, feeling a profound sense of love and gratitude. "I love you too, Anna, more than words can say. You've given me hope and shown me that love is possible again. I want to build a life with you too." In Anna, I had found a partner who understood the depths of my past pain, but also saw the potential for a beautiful future. She helped me believe in love again, and together, we began to envision a new chapter in our lives, one filled with love, joy, and endless possibilities. As we moved forward, I knew that there would still be challenges to face, but with Anna by my side, I felt ready to embrace whatever came our way. We were building something new and wonderful, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and the power of love to heal and transform. With Anna's support and the gradual healing that time provided, I began to feel a growing desire to make more substantial changes in my life. One area that had remained relatively untouched since the divorce was my career. My job had been a refuge during the worst times, a place where I could lose myself at work and forget about the pain at home. But now, as I started to envision a new future, I realized it was time to seek out something more fulfilling and aligned with my renewed sense of purpose. The decision to change jobs was not easy. I had been with my company for over a decade, and the familiarity and stability it provided had been a crucial anchor during the tumultuous period of the divorce. However, the routine that once offered comfort now felt stifling. I wanted to challenge myself, explore new opportunities, and grow both personally and professionally. I began to search for roles that would not only leverage my skills but also ignite my passion. After several months of interviews and networking, I was offered a position at a startup focused on educational technology. The company's mission to improve access to quality education resonated deeply with me, especially given the challenges Michael and Jessica had faced. Accepting the job meant stepping into the unknown, but it also promised a chance to make a meaningful impact. My first day at the new job was a whirlwind of introductions and onboarding sessions. The energy and enthusiasm of the team were contagious, and I quickly felt a sense of belonging. The work was demanding but also incredibly rewarding. Every project, every meeting, felt like a step towards a brighter future, not just for me, but for countless children who would benefit from our innovations. As I settled into my new role, I found a renewed sense of satisfaction and purpose. The challenges of the job pushed me to grow in ways I hadn't anticipated, and the successes, no matter how small, were deeply fulfilling. I was no longer just working to escape my past. I was building a future that aligned with my values and aspirations. Parallel to these professional changes, I continued the difficult but necessary journey of accepting my past. Forgiving Katie was one of the hardest things I had to do, but it was essential for my peace of mind. Our interactions remained polite and focused on co-parenting Michael and Jessica, and over time, The anger and resentment I had harbored began to fade. Forgiveness did not mean forgetting or condoning what had happened. Instead, it was about releasing the hold that the past had on me, allowing myself to move forward without the weight of bitterness. It was a gradual process, marked by small moments of understanding and empathy. I realized that holding on to anger only perpetuated my suffering, and that letting go was a gift I could give myself. Katie and I established a new dynamic, one based on mutual respect and a shared commitment to our children. We attended school events and parent-teacher conferences together, always presenting a united front for Michael and Jessica. These efforts, while sometimes challenging, were crucial in providing our children with a sense of stability and security. One afternoon after a particularly successful school event, Katie and I had a rare moment alone. We stood by the playground watching Michael and Jessica play with their friends. "I'm glad we can do this for them," Katie said, breaking the comfortable silence. "I know it hasn't been easy." I nodded, watching our children laugh and play. "It's worth it," I replied. "They deserve the best we can give them, even if we couldn't make it work between us." She looked at me, a mixture of gratitude and regret in her eyes. "Thank you, John, for everything." At that moment, I felt a sense of closure. The wounds of the past had healed, leaving behind only faint scars. We had both moved on, finding our paths to happiness, and that was enough. With each passing day, I continued to build my new life, one filled with love, fulfillment, and hope. Anna was a constant source of joy and support, and our relationship deepened with each shared experience. My career change had brought new opportunities and a sense of purpose, and my acceptance of the past allowed me to move forward with a lighter heart. Life was not without its challenges, but I faced them with resilience and optimism that had been hard-earned. I had learned to find happiness in the present and to embrace the future with open arms. As I looked around at the life I had rebuilt, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the lessons learned, the love found, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead.